I'm a strategist, I'm a father, I'm one passionate mofo. So I've had the leaders of countries, presidents of the United States, presidents of the largest companies in the world, billionaire entrepreneurs, and I've had moms and dads and entertainers, Serena Williams in the sports field, Hugh Jackman, Pitbull, Usher, you name it. So the one thing they all have in common, I think, is they're hungry. And I know that sounds simplistic, but I believe that's the single most important element that separates the quality of people's lives. It's not just the ability to have hunger, but to sustain it. Hunger means that you want more. You want more of yourself. You want to make a bigger difference. You want to be a better parent. You want to do something more than there is today, and that you don't get satisfied. Most people start out with hunger at an early stage of life and they lose it. But the people that come to me are hungry either because something's happened, they've had a birthday with a 0 on it, they've gone through a divorce, they're starting a business and they know I've got to have a different level, or they're the best in the world and they're always looking for that edge that makes the difference.
What keeps you hungry?
I am hungry. I think what it is I think everybody is born with hunger. Like there's a desire to grow, to expand, to learn, and then disappointment sets in early in life for most people. And then we look to blame something outside of ourselves. And there are many events in our lives that can affect us all. We've all had pain and challenges. But I think if you can find within yourself the part of you that wants to constantly give something more than yourself, if you can find a mission larger than yourself, then you're more pulled to do something than trying to push yourself. And pull has much more power than push. I always say motive does matter. That if your motive is to serve something greater, there is an energy that comes up inside of you. So I feed 2 million people a year because somebody fed my family when I was 11 years old, and now this year we're feeding 4 million. I want to do more in that area. And every business I'm in, that drive just doesn't go away. What's interesting, since 2008, you've seen most large enterprise companies have really figured out how to respond to the world economic crisis at that time by cutting, right? They figured out how to cut their costs, they grew their bottom lines, and they built up their cash. And so they've done very well. But that was 5 years ago, and it's getting hard to keep cutting. You can't cut your way to growth at this point. So most major corporations are now saying, what do we do about the top line? How do we really grow revenues and sales? And so I built something called Coaching in the Cloud, which we've done for some of the most successful companies in the world. And what it does is it comes in and it revamps the sales process. You think about it, in the 1990s, you had all these companies that were re-engineering and they said, look, we're going to go virtual and save the real estate. And all these salespeople are going to just virtualize. There weren't great tools then, there are now, Salesforce.com being one of those, right? But the challenge is they've lost some of the disciplines that maximize the process. So we also, though, are showing people how to maximize technology. So I have a patent pending process in a company that's working with everybody from General Electric to Reuters. It's called Knowledge Now. And it allows you to take the knowledge you need, instead of learning the old style, we got great technology and an old way of learning, you get to learn in the application, like Salesforce.com. While you're there, you're able to get the answers you need when you're working on clients right now. Not go to some class where you're going to forget 90% of it, but do it right now. We found it to be really, really impactful. Well, I believe in rapid change. Technology allows you to create change really rapidly. And I think, social media I've found to be a really useful research tool, because we're living in a world where so much information is coming at us all the time that I always say, it's like we're drowning in information, but we're starving for some wisdom. And if you follow people that are really brilliant, it's almost like having an intelligent browser where they can bring you to the very best stuff right away. One of the companies I have came about because I'm always following these people. I was following some 3D printing, and I found out about this young man that when he was 14, he met a girl who had lost her arm, and found out they didn't have the money for an articulated arm. They're about $80,000. If you lose both arms, over a lifetime you have to get 3 for each arm. You can only imagine, it's beyond the range of most people. And at 17, he created an artificial arm that does more than the traditional arm, articulates, but it can actually, lift 350 pounds. And it was all driven, but instead of $80,000, he does it with 3D printing, and it costs $250. And I saw the site. He was meeting with President Obama. NASA gave him a scholarship. I reached out to him, and now we formed a company together we're building some exoskeletons for people who hopefully will be able to walk, taking those arms and being able to take it to places like Africa, all over the world. With now at this price point, people's lives can change. My companies now together, the companies that I started and the companies I'm partners in, do more than $5 billion in annual sales. If I could have ever dreamed that I have that kind of impact, it would seem ridiculous. But it's all come out of this hunger to constantly make things better and to find a way to do more for other people than anybody else is doing. And I found if you find a way to do better for everybody else, then obviously you have plenty of freedoms in your own life as well.
What's
book is Tony Robbins reading now?
One I'm reading right now is The Believing Brain, which is fascinating. It talks about how our beliefs control our life, control our experience of reality, how it's shaped by both biochemistry and your environment. Really, really great book.
All right, The Believing Brain. Advice. One could say that you give people advice, you give them motivation, inspiration. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
God, I've had so much, but I think one of the most important ones was early in my life. One of my mentors, a man named Jim Rohn, said, Tony, all you have to focus on in your life is find a way to add more value than anybody else does, and you'll never have to worry about anything. Be the person that does more for others, and life will just be anything you want out of it. It really is what it is. And he also said the way to do that is every day work harder on yourself than anything else. Because if you become more intelligent, more valuable, more skilled, you can add more value to other people.
Let's do something a little more prosaic, which is technology, apps. I'm sure you're obviously a avid fan of all this stuff. Do you have a favorite piece of technology or a favorite?
It's different than you might think. I do have it's a large piece of technology.
Go ahead.
I'm in a cryotherapy. I don't know if you're familiar with it?
Yes.
So for people who aren't, I'm on stage 50 hours in a weekend. I got 10,000 people. I do 26.5 miles on one day. It starts at 8:30, goes to literally 1 o'clock in the morning. I do 22 miles 2 days before. So it's like ultra marathon. I used to ice myself as I did in football, and if you ice yourself.
You used to take ice baths.
Yes, yeah, because you have to bring the swelling down in your body. And now I do these 3-minute nitrogen-filled cases that you get in. It's like a sauna, and it reduces your body temperature to minus 220 Fahrenheit. And that sounds like you'd freeze to death or you'd burn. If you had water in your body, you'd burn. You get third-degree burns. But there's no moisture. And it is amazing. It was developed originally for people with arthritis. I got one from my mother-in-law who had all these problems, no more arthritis challenges. So I started using it. It gives you endorphins. It resets your system. It's an extraordinary piece of technology. It's expensive, but you can go to centers that are showing up all over the U.S. Most of the athletes, the Lakers and so forth, are starting to use these. So what we've got to do is make that change in those standards. That's where the shifts happen. It doesn't happen any other place. And I'll give you a very simple example. If you want to know the difference in people's lives, it all comes down to what are the things that are musts for you versus shoulds. So let me tell you this. We said to have an extraordinary life, you got to have an extraordinary psychology, right? Extraordinary psychology means you got to live in an extraordinary state. To be in an extraordinary state, you got to condition your nervous system, your body, your physiology and focus to be at their best. Do you agree with this? Yes or no? Then to do that, though, you can do that. Why doesn't everybody? Not because you can't. We all have the ability. It's because of our standards. I remember a time early in my career, I was about 24, and I went to do a seminar in Boston. And in those days, a big seminar for me was like 125 people. And it was a 3-day seminar, and we worked around the clock, and people made such extraordinary changes in their life. And at the end of it, I was feeling so fulfilled. I was thinking, my God, I'm 24, maybe 25 at the time, and I am so happy because I have found my mission in life. I'm doing what I love. It's making a difference in people's lives. This is extraordinary. So we finished about midnight on the Sunday night. And around midnight, I'm still wound up, so I don't feel like going to bed. So I decided, okay, let me take a walk here, and I decided to go through Copley Square. If you've been through Copley Square, it's a pretty neat place. Because in Copley Square, you can look up and you can see buildings that were here before we were known as the United States, and beside them you see skyscrapers that are new. It's a pretty cool place. So I'm walking around midnight on Sunday night. There's nobody in Copley Square midnight on Sunday night. And I'm walking along, and I see this guy in the distance, and he's kind of stumbling back and forth between the gutter and the sidewalk. He's got a long trench coat on, his head's down like this. He's holding a brown bag, and I can start to smell him even before I get there, and I'm thinking, this guy is obviously drunk. And as I started to get closer, I thought, I bet he's going to beg me for some money. And sure enough, whatever you focus on life tends to happen, doesn't it? So sure enough, he gets real close to me, and I thought all of a sudden he wasn't going to do it, and all of a sudden he popped his head up. It was really weird. He went, "Mister!" He had this really bizarre looking sounding voice. He went, "Mister, could you loan me a quarter?" And I thought, do I want to reward this behavior? And then I thought, I don't want him to suffer. Do you have this dilemma sometimes? Like, I'm not here to judge. So years ago, I finally decided I always just give. Even if the person's pulling a scam, that's for them to deal with. If I have the ability, then I give. And so I thought, but could I teach him something? So I asked him a question back. I said, is that all you want is a quarter? So he goes, yeah, just 1 quarter. 1 quarter changed my whole life. 1 quarter. I said, really? He said, yeah, 1 quarter. So I reached in my pocket, and I pulled out my money clip. And in those days, I was very young, just starting to succeed. And my original mentor was a man named Jim Rohn. I don't know, how many have heard of Jim Rohn? Anybody? Yeah. He's a great guy. And Jim told me, he said, Tony, look, you've come from a poor background, you got a poor psychology, you got to change it. He said, you don't have any money, so pretend you do. He said, start training your brain, condition it. He said, go save all your money, get $300 bills and put them on the outside of your money clip, even though you only have $5 in between them. So every time you put it out, you'll see that, you'll feel inspired, you'll feel better. He said, and you'll feel better, you'll do better. So I was like, okay. So I did. So I pulled my money clip, and sure enough, I got $300 bills down. I made sure he saw the bills. So I'm tearing through that, right? Looking in between there, see if I can find some change. But I made sure he saw it. Sure enough, he's looking at the $100 bills, checking it out. I find the quarter, I pull it out, take the money, put it in my pocket. I notice he's watching my hand going into the pocket. I took the quarter and I looked at him and I said, sir, life will pay any price you ask of it. And I gave him the quarter. And then something really interesting happened. He took the quarter. He looked at the quarter. He looked at me. He looked at my pocket. He looked back at the quarter, looked at me, looked at my pocket, looked at me again, looked at the quarter, looked at my pocket, looked back at me and said, you're weird. And then he shuffled on off like this, right? And I thought to myself, wow, what's the difference between him and me? I mean, I was 24, 25 at the time, doing what I love most, have my mission in life, and he's in his early 60s, drunk on the street begging for quarters. What's the difference? And I thought, well, maybe God's blessed me because I'm such a good person. I thought, oh, and he's such a bad person, that's such bull. And I thought, wow, maybe the answer to that question is what I just told him. Life will pay whatever price you ask of it. But you know what's interesting? You got to ask intelligently. In the Bible it says, ask and you shall what? Yeah, pretty good formula. You ought to look into it. But you know what? It says ask and you shall receive, but I'm sure it meant ask intelligently. I'm sure that's what God meant. I'm sure he didn't mean bitch and you will receive. Whine and you will receive. I don't think that was the instruction. Now, if you were going to ask intelligently, there might be 5 elements of that. Number one, you'd have to ask specifically, wouldn't you? You wouldn't ask in a general way. People do it all the time. They go, I want more money. Fine, here's $1, get out of here. Very often, you're getting what you're asking for. You're just not aware of how general you're asking. Clarity is power. The more clear you are about exactly what it is you want, the more your brain knows how to get there. Your brain is a servo mechanism. It's like a bomb. Those bombs, those missiles, they have a servo mechanism. So if the target moves, it knows what the target is, it follows it. Your brain, when you condition it, knows exactly what to go for and it'll find a way to get there. Did you ever buy a certain outfit or a certain car and suddenly see that car outfit everywhere? How many of you have had that experience? Say, aye. How come that car outfit's everywhere? It always was everywhere, but now you notice it. And the reason is because there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system, the RAS. That part of your brain determines what you notice and what you don't notice. Your brain spends most of its time trying to make sure you don't notice because you'll go crazy if you notice everything. But when you decide what's most important to you, your brain goes after it. Everyone I know who's successful builds what I call an RPM plan. An RPM is built on the metaphor that the way to get from where you are to where do you want to go to the fastest is you got to build power, like in a car, RPMs. And the R stands for they know the result they're after. They know what they want precisely. If you don't know exactly what you want or you let yourself get beyond that into something general, you're not going to achieve it. Clarity is power. You got to know the specific result you're after. What do you want? If you can't answer that question right now in your personal life, in your body, in your relationships, in your finances, in your spirituality, then you're not going to be as fulfilled as you want to be. Today we're going to have you answer one of those questions at least. The second part of it, you got to know P, why you're doing it. Because you know what? You may get a big goal. Somebody says, I want to make $1 billion. I want to bring peace to the earth. Why? Because as soon as you come up with a goal, all the obstacles show up. Unless you've got enough emotional drive to break through that, you're never going to discover what it really takes. So you got to get yourself past that. And the way to get past that is have enough reasons. Reasons come first, answers come second. This man did not know what he wanted. He did not have enough reasons. To ask intelligently, you got to ask specifically. To ask intelligently, you got to know why you want it, have enough drive to make it happen, enough juice to make it happen. If you don't have enough reasons, you will not make it happen. And the M is, what is your massive action plan? What is going to get you to actually fall through? Because the first plan's not going to work and the second plan's going to work, so you better have enough plans that if the first two don't work, you still got something else. Otherwise, you're going to be having excuses why it didn't work. So asking intelligently requires that. So if we're going to be extraordinary in our results, we've got to be in an extraordinary state. We've got to know what we want and we've got to go use it.